everybody. My name is Kevin Paige, and as KISS approaches their final show ever, I thought this would be a great time and opportunity to tell you my KISS story. And hopefully you'll find it a little entertaining. And I know so many of us have our own KISS stories and that are similar, but this one's mine. I'd like to give you a little professional background on myself. The short story is, back in 1989, I had a record out on Chrysalis Records, and I had 2 top 40 singles, Don't Shut Me Out.
Don't shut me out. Don't tell me that you know what love's about. 'Cause baby, you know nothing.
And Anything I Want.
Anything I want. Anything I want. You can't stop me from jamming. No, I can do anything I want.
Where is Kevin today? Well, in his 6th week in our countdown, he moves up a notch to number 17. Here's the ever-thankful family man, Kevin Paige, with Don't Shut Me Out.
I was lucky enough to be able to travel the world, went overseas, had some success in other countries, did lots of television shows, did some MTV stuff, and I even opened for Debbie Gibson for a while.
Kevin! Hey! Kevin Paige!
Kevin Paige.
Kevin Paige. Kevin Paige, anything I want.
I can do anything I want.
In a nutshell, the grunge scene of the 90s kind of squashed anybody who was a pop artist. I never released a second record for Chrysalis. It sucked. So, how does KISS tie into my life? Here it goes.
Here's a story of a boy named Kevin, who was easily the weakest on the block. Tried to do what he was told, loved his mother, tucked in by 8 o'clock. Not the smartest and not athletic, so the bullies had a target on his back. Is there something that can make him special? He better find it fast. Then this one day between G.I. Joe and Lassie, he had founded a rock band that he loved. Here's this group in makeup, dressed in leather. Oh my goodness, it's become a Stanley crush. A Stanley crush. Paul Stanley crush. That's the way it became a Stanley crush.
I realize that was slightly awkward for some of you, but I make no apologies. My music journey starts back as a kid in Memphis when I discovered the Jackson 5, Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind & Fire. The love and joy in that music just jumped off the speakers, and I loved it. So when I first heard KISS, it scared me to death. I was having nothing to do with that. I even found out that my brother and sister were going to go see a KISS show in 1975, and I was like, what is wrong with you? Who goes and sees that other than hippies smoking weed and people popping pills and getting drunk? That was gross. I don't know how it happened, but by the age of 9 in 1976, I was all in with KISS. I think the gateway for me was Peter's drum solo on Kiss Alive. Oh my gosh. Oh, in the cowbell. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And then with all of Paul's bantering, all right, it just made you feel like you were at the show. I was captivated by the energy of Kiss Alive. It was just, I would sit there and stare at the speakers as if I could actually see what was going on stage, looking at it. It was the costumes, it was the makeup, it was the fire, it was the guitars. And it was a kid's dream come true. It was like Evel Knievel, Halloween, and 4th of July all mixed into one. And it's like Kiss weren't real people to me. They were superheroes. There was Kiss, and there was regular people. I began to play along with Peter Criss on the sofa cushions, and I just work it out and play along, and I really developed some use of my hands and stuff. And one day my sister came in and watched me do that, and she went to my mom and says, "Hey, I think he might could really do this." My obsession with Kiss led to my first public appearance at 10. I was Peter Criss. My friends were Ace, Gene, and Paul. And we had makeup, we had smoke, we had this giant sign that we homemade, Kiss sign we made hanging from the second story. And we had my mother playing the records behind us so we could fake the instruments. It must have looked completely stupid. And I was so nervous I wanted to back out, but we had all our class friends from the neighborhood. They were all there, so the show must go on. That next year, I saw in the paper that Kiss was coming to Memphis. I was like, oh my gosh, you mean they're coming to my town? It was as if I had won the lottery. And then I was like, but wait a minute. There's no way my mother's letting me go see Kiss. And she's certainly not going to accompany me and sit through the concert with me. And who wants their mother to go to a Kiss concert with them anyway? You see, I had bought Love Gun a couple months earlier, and when my mother saw the album, she made me take it back. Apparently, the title of the record did not get lost on her when the metaphor went straight over my little kid head. So I had to take it to the store and return it, and I was thinking, there's no way they're going to take this back after it's been opened. So I take a fork and carve it into it and go up to the store and claim that it was scratched, and they look at it. They're like, kid, this is not a manufacturer defect. Go away. So, Love Gun comes back with me. Except now I can't show it to my mom. It's contraband. So if I can't even have Love Gun in the house, how in the heck am I going to go to the concert? Well, as luck would have it, my best friend had a mother who was very sympathetic to the plight and the passions of a kid. And she offered to buy the tickets and take us and drop us off at the concert. I was like, oh my goodness. So she calls my mother. I'm holding my breath. And I am completely shocked when my mother says, yes, I can go. I was going to see Kiss. So the day of the show comes, and I'm just at home, and I get a call from my sister who's working at a candy shop that's very close to the venue where Kiss is going to play that night. And she goes, Kevin, Paul Stanley was just in here. And I'm like, no way. And she goes, and he wasn't wearing makeup. I'm like, what? You saw him without makeup? How'd you know it was Paul Stanley? Everybody was saying, look, it's Paul Stanley. Oh my gosh. I was freaking out. And she said he was so nice. He insisted on paying for his friend's ice cream and stuff. I've never been so jealous in my life. So my best friend and I get dropped off in the parking lot. Before we even get into the venue, I buy a T-shirt outside. Little did I know, these are the bootleg T-shirts. I get home after the fact that the logo's all off-centered. I couldn't wear it. It looked stupid. Another loss for a kid. Crooks 1, kid 0. Live and learn. So we go into the concert, and AC/DC's warming up. Now, I didn't care who it was. They were just keeping me from seeing Kiss. So I wanted them off the stage. And Angus Young was jumping around doing his little Angus strut. And he had this little kid's uniform on, this school uniform. I'm going, who wears a backpack? A backpack? That's not rock and roll. Little did I know. So they get done, and here it is, the moment I've been waiting on. Lights go down, comes up, Paul, Ace, Gene are coming down from those lifts. It's completely overwhelming and awesome. The flames are going up. The flames were assaulting how much you can feel the heat on you. And I'm 10 going, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So, but I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you I was conflicted throughout the show. Because my kid self was watching Gene and was completely horrified, thinking it was a realistic possibility he was going to come down off stage and kill somebody, if not everybody. I'm not even exaggerating how overwhelmed I was with fear. It was even when the show was actually done, I was like, hey, we're not gonna die. But that show changed my life forever. I knew from that point on that music was gonna be my life, and there would be no room for anything else. You know, seeing your heroes as a kid is one of the most magical things ever. You actually believe that they've done you a favor for allowing you to just see them and be in their presence. It's crazy, but I think Kiss always understood the power of that, and they wanted to deliver everything you expected it to be and more. Throughout 5th and 6th grade, all I thought about was Kiss. I'd draw their makeup, I'd dream of instruments, I'd imagine stage layouts, I'd just stare at the pictures for far beyond normal periods of time. What? I mean, it messed me up. It actually messed up my education. All I could think about was Kiss. The 6th grade music teacher at my school actually laughed when I said that I had planned on joining the 7th grade school band the following year. See, I wasn't one of her pet students. She didn't let me touch the actual instruments the way she did her favorites. The hurt I felt when she mocked my ambition never really left me. And I always kind of used it as fuel. Always had that attitude of, I'm going to show her. So 7th grade came along, and dang it, I was going to play drums for real. From 7th grade on to the 12th grade, I'd actually become a real musician. I'd simultaneously learn to play drums, piano, guitar, bass, and my mother had even bought me a little 4-track Fostex recorder where I could start recording myself and messing with songwriting and production. I should point out that in my musical studies, I wasn't actually listening to Kiss as a resource. I was into Prince, Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, stuff that was a little more complex musically, and because I was grooming myself to be a producer, an arranger, and a songwriter, an artist and stuff. So in a really wonderful way, I always got to hold on to just being a fan of Kiss. I didn't need to sound like them, play like them. I just loved them. Fast forward 4 years, and I had added singing to my bag of tricks, and I had written enough songs and done enough demos that I felt it was time to go to New York and try to get a record deal. And long story short, I got one.
Anything I want.
My debut record's coming out June 1989 on Chrysalis Records. And if you've never had a record deal before, you don't know the feeling of what it's like to finally be allowed to play in the big leagues. It's exciting, it's scary, and it's just one step of hundreds of steps that need to go right before you see any kind of success. But at least for now, I had one thing in common with my heroes. I had a record deal. You know, it's a strange thing to want to be a star, and you really have to give off an aura of success before you've even had anything. And I'd heard Paul Stanley talk about it forever, saying, well, if you don't believe in yourself, who's going to believe in you? But it's not for everyone, and if it does come naturally, there's basically two explanations. You're either a narcissist, or you're trying to overcome some sort of struggle in your life that fuels you to stop at nothing to achieve success in hopes that it'll validate your existence. At least you hope it will, until you get it and find out that it doesn't. Oh, and there is a third option. You may just possibly be God's gift to the music world. Most aren't. I was super shy, not well-read, not particularly interesting, doubted myself terribly, but I knew what a rock star looked like. I'd seen Paul Stanley do it multiple times and run it like a ringmaster. So I'd go out there and put on my rock star face. But when you're starting out, it's not really listeners you have to impress. It's radio programmers, it's record promoters, industry people. So you have to go out there and do a lot of butt kissing. But the one thing I did have going for me is I was a pretty friendly Southern guy, and I genuinely did appreciate program directors at radio stations meeting with me and playing my record. So that was the easy part. My first single, Don't Shut Me Out, made it to number 17 on the Hot 100 charts.
We're Expose. We've got number 17 ready. Kevin Paige, Don't Shut Me Out.
And there I was next to Janet Jackson, Phil Collins, Billy Joel, Aerosmith, B-52s, Bon Jovi. It was awesome. And then I got to go out and open up for Debbie Gibson. And one of the stops was my hometown, the Mid-South Coliseum. And that's the arena, that was the first place that I saw Kiss at. So it was surreal to play there. Allow me to read your mind for a second. You're thinking, then why don't I know who you are? Why don't I know your song? Right? Am I good or what? Let me tell you why. Because if you want your record to be heard, there's only one place on the chart to be.
Where's that?
And that's in that top 10. Every other number is either on its traveling its way up or on its way down. When you crack that top 10, it means every city, everywhere is playing it at that very moment. And that's powerful because when that happens, every backwoods radio station in the world jumps on playing that top 10 list. And now, really, truly, everyone has heard your song. Interestingly, when it came to my own hometown, one of the most powerful radio stations here would not add it to the playlist till it was on its way down the charts, which was way too late to actually be of any help. I know, to Paul Stanley. So, my song Don't Shut Me Out had run its course, and it was time for the second single, Anything I Want. And Anything I Want didn't chart as high as Don't Shut Me Out, which is a real gut punch for any new artist because you have to have a follow-up single that does even better than the first one. I didn't realize it at the time, but number 27 was as high as Anything I Want was going to go. But Kiss's Forever was at number 26, I believe. And on the Rick D's weekly Top 40 countdown, in the same breath he was saying Paul Stanley, he went on to say Kevin Paige. I was like, oh my good gravy.
Climbing fast, it's Kiss with Paul Stanley on lead vocals. Forever goes up 4 to number 28 this weekend. Number 27 back-to-back and non-stop on the weekly Top 40. Kevin Paige.
Anything I want.
I am running in the same charts as Kiss. The Kiss connection went even further. When I was in Los Angeles, I was at Tower Records, and they had put out a big painting of my album cover. And on top of my painting or next to it was Kiss's album. I was like, this is so awesome. This is more awesome than my face being out there is the fact that Kiss's is right near mine. Around that same time, I was at a radio convention in San Francisco, and there's lots of artists there, which I wasn't starstruck by anybody, but in walks Paul Stanley, and I freaked out. I told my record guy that was with me, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Paul Stanley. You have to take me over there to meet him. He's like, dude, chill out, calm down. So we start to approach Paul calmly. And before I say anything, Paul introduces himself and says, hey, you're Kevin Paige. I like your record. I'm like, what? Is he punking me? Is this true? And you know, how could he have heard my song? And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I'm right next to him on the charts. Of course he's heard it. He goes on into the party, and I managed to find a photographer and get a picture made with him. And you can't tell in the picture, but my pants are actually soiled. At least it felt that way. He was super gracious, unpretentious, and I can't recall a single thing I said to him because I'm sure I was in shock and probably just babbled. I performed that night at the event, and man, we were on fire because I thought there was a chance that Paul could be in the audience. I was like, all right, to my sister, take that. I met Paul Stanley. After that night, there was more radio promoting for me to do on the West Coast. I was in Portland, Oregon to do an interview, and in walked Paul and Gene. They were there to promote Forever. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, you mean Kiss has to do the same butt-kissing stuff I do? Yes, they do. That's how it works. You see, Kiss hadn't had a pop radio hit since I Was Made for Loving You 11 years earlier, so they were not going to waste a radio-friendly song like Forever. They were making the most of it. I ran into Paul that day in the lobby of the hotel. We were both staying at the same place. And just on a whim, I took a chance and asked him, you want to grab some lunch? He said, sure. I was like, oh my gosh, now I just haven't met Paul Stanley. I'm going to get to hang out with him. Yes, indeed. So I'm a little calmer now that I've met Paul a few times, and which is why I'm able to remember the conversation. But I told him how much Kiss had meant to me and told him it was good to hear Kiss on the radio. And he says, oh, you don't know how good. And I could tell I knew what he meant. It's basically going, good gosh, we're legends. What's it going to take to get a song on the radio? And I can't believe we're out here having to promote it and all that. But they're royalty. They deserve to be on the radio. It was a great song. He asked me where I was from, and I told him Memphis. And immediately he goes, Mid-South Coliseum. I'm thinking, wow, these artists really, they remember, these arenas are like second homes to them. They develop relationships with these venues. You know, they think of a city and they know exactly where it is they play when they're there. He shared some Kiss stories from back in the day, and he was telling me about the time Peter came out to sing Beth, and Peter's background music was on a cassette tape. Well, this night, the tape got mixed up, which would have been a huge disaster, but Peter walks out there to sing Beth, and on comes Led Zeppelin, Whole Lotta Love. It must have really ticked off Peter. And Paul got tickled telling me the story. When you talk to Paul in person, you can literally almost see those wheels in his head turning, looking for the clever thing to say, the funny. He's really funny to watch. He's very entertaining. The thing that impressed me is that it's like he was aware that he was being gracious with his time to give me this once-in-a-lifetime moment to get to hang with my idol. He was totally aware of that, and I think he could appreciate that because he's been a fan in his life of people before. How awesome would it have been to him to hang out with Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page? I've never told this part of the story before to anybody publicly for fear that it might upset some of my Memphis friends, but it's time, so here we go. I told Paul that one of his guitars, his PS-10 from the Love Gun era, was at a local music store in Memphis on display. Apparently his guitar tech had taken it to the store and just forgot to pick it up when the tour left town, which incidentally was the tour I actually saw them on. But that guitar had been displayed for years up there. I had looked at it a million times and just stared at it. What was so awesome is that the paint that was taken off the back of the guitar, you just knew it was rubbed from all the rhinestones on his costume. And I would just stare at that guitar and going, he played that guitar. Oh. So I told him, I said, hey man, the guitar belongs to you. You ought to get it back. So that next day, he makes a call to Strings and Things and says, hey, this is Paul Stanley. You've got my guitar. Ship it to me now. And they did. Everyone at the store was scrambling going, what the heck? How does Paul Stanley call 20 years, how many years later, and just all of a sudden wants his guitar back? They didn't know why it happened, and I never told them. But it was me. I did it. Sorry. I knew what that instrument meant to him. It's a piece of history. People had stolen other things in his career, costumes and stuff, and just in some small way, I wanted to give something back to him out of appreciation for all the inspiration he had given to me. And I wanted to relate me with something positive, something helpful in his life. A side note to all my admiration for Paul is, whenever I donned the Kiss makeup myself, I never actually used Paul's makeup. I was always either Peter or Gene, which made sense for Peter because when I was younger, I was a drummer, so I did that. And with Gene, I found that my facial structure was probably more conducive to that, and it was always easy to just stick my tongue out like that. But when I really psychoanalyze whose makeup I chose, I think it was really just too intimidating to do Paul's makeup. I mean, he's the front man. He's got that incredible banter voice and can engage an audience like no one else can. As singers know, it's hard enough to keep your voice in good shape just to do the songs each night. I can't imagine doing the screaming that he does to communicate with the audience. It's crazy. It's superhuman that he still has a voice. And then there's, of course, Paul walks that, masculine, feminine kind of line that very few people can do. Prince can do it. Mick Jagger does it, but it ain't for amateurs. You want to go out and try to pretend that you're the sex symbol in the band, you're just asking for a beating. I went on to a few more radio events where I ran into Paul and Gene and was able to say hello to Paul. And I was particularly at this one thing, they were promoting a new promotional record. I think it was called First Kiss, Last Licks. And I asked Paul to sign the record for me, and he wrote, "To Kevin, you're my idol, Paul Stanley." I think he appreciated the tip on getting his guitar back. And And you know, one of the things I did when I would meet him, I didn't ask for autographs too soon. I never wanted to seem like I was just, you know, never going to have a chance to meet him again. You know, you want to professionally look like you're going to be around for a little while, like you're in the industry. With Forever on the radio, Kiss started out on the Hot in the Shade tour. And as luck would have it, a group that was on the label I was signed to was opening, Slaughter. So whenever I was in a city, I was able to get backstage passes to the Kiss show. And I would hang out back there, and there would be a meet and greet with fans, and Paul would enter, and when he'd see me standing off to the side, he'd usually come over and just say hello to me first, which was awesome. One night when they played Memphis, I took my girlfriend to see them, and I introduced her to Paul and Gene. And Gene comes over and tells her, he's like, "He's a good kid. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. Good kid." He said it like the Godfather. It was cool. Heck, I was elated that Gene even noticed that out there on the road I wasn't acting a fool and felt like he should tell my girlfriend about it. That same night, I took the opportunity to tell Paul that there was a local politician who was trying to stir people up by saying he was going to shut down that Kiss concert if anything inappropriate or lewd was to happen. So in that famous Paul voice that I'll spare you the imitation, he starts getting the crowd riled up by saying, "I heard there's this politician, Jimmy Moore, that claims he's going to shut down this rock and roll party." And the crowd's just going nuts. They're protesting and booing. And I'm thinking to myself, how awesome is this? My idol is up on stage talking about a conversation that I just had with him. It was cool. And every Kiss fan knows that famous dialogue from Kiss Alive, where Paul says, "I was talking to somebody backstage before, and they was telling me a lot of you people like to drink vodka and orange juice." And I'm going, I was that someone from backstage. But you know, a side note, who pulls an artist aside backstage and says, "Hey, Paul, I got something super important I need to tell you about. These people here tonight, they like to drink vodka and orange juice." I could see Paul going, "Huh, okay, thanks. Maybe I'll use that." After the Hot in the Shade tour, I didn't see Paul again. I always liked to imagine that I would be friends with Paul. I still have dreams that I'm the fifth member of Kiss and I'm sitting in with him. And you know, from the time I did have with him, I felt like there was a lot of things in common, and he's a real grounded person. But it wasn't meant to be. At the 1996 Kiss convention in Nashville, I wanted to say hello to him, because it's a smaller venue and things, but I'd have to be a name dropper and do all that stuff, and I'd hate doing that. I don't like that stuff, so I didn't do it. But there is a cool story from that day. I brought a friend of mine who wasn't a Kiss fan, but I wanted him to see all this stuff. And we're in the back of the hall as they're doing their Unplugged set. And, you know, Kiss they're throwing out picks left and right like they do. And I'm really far in the back. But I told my buddy, I said, "Man, this next pick that Gene throws out is coming to me." And I kid you not, he flicked that pick and it's like it had a jet engine in it. It literally flew around the room, went all the way back and hit me dead center in the throat and stuck to my skin. We looked at each other and went, "What?" We were high-fiving. I was like, dude, I willed that pick to come to me. Remember I said that I wasn't really musically influenced by Kiss, but let me tell you, the more I thought about it, I looked back at some old things I'd written, and I actually could hear that influence. I was just always so focused on the funky sort of pop elements of the things that I totally missed it, but I absolutely was influenced. And for this video, I obviously could not use Kiss's music, so I had to recreate all these tracks. You know, I played all the instruments on them and stuff, so I'm laying down the parts just going, this stuff just instinctively is coming out of me. I mean, these are songs I hadn't even really played before, but it just was so natural. I'm like, this is so deep in my core of my DNA. And the one thing I found when I put these songs together, and this is going to sound funny, but how funky Kiss is. that old stuff, man, there's something to it to where Peter's got that R&B kind of drumming. The guitars are spacious, and you're filling in them holes with those funky beats. I was just going, I love it. It was almost like some of the songs were soul music, just swapped out the horns and keyboards with rock guitars, but there was a real groove going on there that a lot of groups didn't have, and it was magical. And by the way, I had to program the drums with my finger drums. And I don't have my studio set up to play drums live anymore, so I really wished I could have played live drums, so I apologize for that. When Kiss announced the reunion tour in 1996, I went crazy with joy. I went out and bought Gene Simmons' Punisher bass, which is a great bass. I played on some records. I bought my dream guitar, the Ibanez Paul Stanley PS10. I bought Ace Frehley's Les Paul signature model. I was all in for the comeback. I traveled to multiple cities to see the show. And in this time period, I was using my PS10 live to play. And let me tell you, that's not only the coolest looking guitar, but it's made like a tank. It plays wonderful. And I know these things are collector's items, but I don't buy them to put on the wall. I actually play them and abuse them. In the year 2000 or so, I was playing my PS10 a lot live and came home from one night late from a gig and was just so tired I accidentally left that PS10 in the car. Now, I lived in a neighborhood where crackheads combed every car every night just hoping you would mess up. So the next morning I wake up, find all my glass broken out in the driveway, and I think, what'd they take? I didn't even leave anything in the car. Oh, crap! My PS10! I screamed out an obscenity that's still lingering in space, traveling, offending other galaxies as we speak. So I go to try to replace it, except this time I want a vintage PS10. And I find this guy named Gentry Riley, who's a big Kiss freak as well and has lots of Kiss guitars. And I bought his, and a few years later, he went on to actually paint a lot of Gene's custom basses for him. Does fabulous work. Gentry Riley is an incredible artist. I'll close on this last story. My wife Bethany and I are playing and doing our gig down on Bill Street. And it's a night when Gene and his son are in town to film Family Jewels, and they're actually filming at the club we're playing at. They're filming in the afternoon. And we didn't hang out to catch a glimpse because we didn't want to be stalkers watching them do that. But at that night at our gig, the break was coming up, and I said, hey, let's go see if we can spot Gene somewhere down here. I heard he's next door. So sure enough, we go out there, and he's out there signing autographs at this other place, and you know, you could tell it was a bunch of young people who really didn't know who he was other than the reality star. So they're all taking their selfies with him and stuff.
You know he was.
I'm not bum rushing him. We're keeping our distance back. So
Come to Uncle Genie.
He kind of gets done with his fill of needing to be seen and makes his way back to the hotel. So we continue giving him his space. Just kind of, how cool is it to catch a glimpse of Gene Simmons? So a couple friends that were actually with me, as Gene is away from the crowd, they go up to him to try to get some pictures. And I'm going, come on, y'all, you're not even fans. Leave them alone. So they just wanted their selfie, and Gene gives it to him. So my wife and I are at this point 20 and 30 feet away from him, totally just not wanting to be those people. So he looks at me and my wife and says, go away, with some twisted king voice. I mean, it literally, his fingers were like, run along, you little peasants. And we were speechless. I mean, my wife and I are not short on words ever. We pride ourselves on a good comeback when somebody's being a putz. But we were just speechless. I mean, this was crazy. I wanted to go, Gene, I'm the only one out here that's the real fan. That's why I'm respecting your space. I'm the one who's put thousands of dollars in your pocket and bought all your crap. Jeez, it's my city. It's not even your city. It's a public sidewalk. I was beyond heartbroken. Something changed in me that night. We got back to our gig, got up on stage, and told the crowd what had happened. Actually got them all chanting, "Gene sucks, Gene sucks, Gene sucks." It felt good. The next day, I set out to sell all my Kiss guitars. Truth be known, I actually was threatening to take the bass out, the Gene's bass, and drive over it with my car, videotape it, and put it on YouTube and tell the story. Luckily, my wife talked me out of that. Gene had no idea who I was, and I'm not saying he should have. I'm just saying that at one point in my life, here's this guy who was being so cool to me while I was an artist, and now I'm just a nobody, and he feels like he can just take a big piss on you. If I could say one thing to Paul, I'd say, Paul, as you know, professional entertainers are not that different from professional athletes. If you'd been Paul Stanley, the NFL quarterback, you'd be the only guy in history to still be playing into his 60s and still winning Super Bowls. You're arguably the best front man of all time. Most singers couldn't have kept your type of delivery up for 10 years, much less 50. And if no one's declared it, I will, my friend. You are a champion, a legend. I hope life after Kiss comes with a sense of peace. I hope it puts a smile on your face when you reflect on how much joy was brought to so many of us. We'll miss Kiss, but we have those great memories too. And you've certainly convinced me that a world without heroes really would suck. Paul has really impressed me with just how much of as he's aged, how wise he is, and just a heartfelt person. I still love Kiss, and I actually got a lump in my throat at the end of the road tour when it came through Memphis. And you know, as fate would have it, my seat was perfectly positioned to see Paul fly over, right over my head. It was a perfect ending to a 43-year infatuation. Thanks for the memories, Paul. God love you and your beautiful family. P.S. To Paul, you're my idol. Kevin Paige.
Here's a story of a boy named Kevin who was easily the weakest on the block. Tried to do what he was told, loved his mother, tucked in by 8 o'clock. Not the smartest and not athletic, so the bullies had a target on his back.